What's good with the YouTube? You already know, Real Talk with Flacco coming live and direct. And on this platform, what do? We dive into sensitive issues, delicate matters concerning prison, gangs, recidivism, as well as addiction. And as you can tell by the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about the Aryan Brotherhood and giving a brief historical outline as far as its functions, its history, and so forth, man. So bear with us, man. I'm going to do a little slideshow, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit of personal details with maybe a few interactions I've had with these individuals. November 24th, 1962, Folsom inmate Conrad N. Becker, 41, serving time for burglary, was stabbed in the prison chapel by 3 inmates who had taken members of the prison church or choir hostage. Farrell Fenton, 29, Edward W. Maurer, 27, and Edward Kaw, 29. 3 prisoners serving life terms for violent offenses are charged with murder. Farrell is a member of an inmate gang known as Hitler's Helpers. Now, this is the first time I've ever heard about a Hitler's Helpers organization or a group. So next thing, January 16th, 1967, Nazi prison gang associate Robert Holderman is stabbed and beaten to death by a black guerrilla family member at San Quentin State Prison. January 17th, 1967, 2,800 inmates, 1,000 white and 1,800 black, square off on the main yard at San Quentin over the death of Robert Holderman. Prison staff breaks up the potential riot by firing several shots into the crowd, wounding 5. 1 inmate suffers severe head trauma from a beating he receives, and 2 others suffer non-fatal heart attacks. Man, they must have got a little scared when the shit kicked off, huh? Okay, August 27th, 1967, Byron Barry Mills is arrested in Ventura, California, and held for transfer to Sonoma County, which has issued an arrest warrant in his name for grand theft auto. Here we go. December 12th, 1967, Byron Barry Mills is denied a request for probation and sentenced to serve 1 year in the Sonoma County Jail. January 29th, 1968, Byron Barry Mills and Buddy Coleman escaped from the Sonoma County Honor Farm. Yeah, as you guys already know, Byron Barry Mills is also known as a Baron, and he's one of the current leaders in the federal faction, Federal Commission of the AB. March 12th, 1968, Byron Barry Mills is sentenced to serve 6 months to 1 year and 1 day in state prison for an escape without force from the Sonoma County Jail. Mills is received at Vacaville State Medical Facility, which is also known as Vacaville. August 13th, 1968, Byron Barry Mills' request for parole is denied. March 13th, 1969, Byron Barry Mills is released from CTF Central, which is Soledad. January 13th, 1970. Soledad Aryan Brotherhood leader William Buzzard Harris, fellow AB Howard Smiley Hoyle, Mexican Mafia member Joseph Colorado Joe Arias, John Fanine, and Raymond Guerrero, AB associate, AB member Ronnie Dean Harper, aka Harpo, and Robert Chuco Winokur engaged Black Guerrilla family members on the exercise yard at Soledad Prison. Tower guard Opie G. Miller opens fire, killing BGF leader W.L. Nolan, Cleveland Edwards, and Alvin Miller. Billy Harris is shot in the groin. That shows how racist the guards were back then, because if you notice, all the people who were mainly shot were actually BGF members. January 30th, 1970. Byron Barry Mills and William Hackworth are arrested after robbing a Stewart Point's convenience store on January 28th. February 3rd, 1970. Byron Barry Mills is convicted of first-degree armed robbery after co-defendant Hackworth testified for the prosecution. Mills is sentenced to serve 5 years to life. Man, 5 years to life. July 11th, 1970. Nazi prison gang associate Norman St. Martin is sentenced to die in the gas chamber in the fatal stabbing of Folsom inmate James Rufus Carter. It's the first time you really see them direct anything towards the Aryans at that time. Aryan Brotherhood members Fred, Steve Mendrin, and Donald Ray Hale stabbed Nuestra Familia leader Fred Charles Castillo to death at the Chino Institute for Men. The murders reportedly committed to seal a pact between the ABs and the Mexican Mafia. I'm going to elaborate a little bit about that after we already do this little historical timeline, but I got some input on this. December 15th, 1972, Aryan Brotherhood members Fred, Steve Mendrin, and Donald Ray Hale are sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Fred Charles Castillo. Aryan Brotherhood faction formed in the federal prison system in 1973. So they've had reach for that long. October 18th, 1977. Parolee Joseph Little Joe O'Rourke is arrested after a shootout with campus police at El Camino Community College. November 25th, 1977. Aryan Brotherhood member David Owens and an associate, Robert New York Crane, robbed the Bank of America in Agoura, California, earning approximately $9,000. That was a lot of money back then, man. $9,000. December 2nd, 1977. Robert Crane is named as a prime suspect in the murder of AB member Kenneth Hogjaw Cochran. December 29th, 1977. Byron Barry Mills is released from San Quentin. January 11th, 1978. Owens is arrested and charged with the Agoura robbery. Authorities seized $3,844. March 13th, 1978. Owens is found guilty and sentenced to federal prison. His co-defendant Crane is held in Orange County Jail on a murder charge. March 31st, 1978. Little Joe O'Rourke is sentenced to 7 years in state prison. May 1978. Aryan Brotherhood member Robert Lee Griffin McGriff sponsors Clifford Smith for membership. The sponsorship is later approved by John William Stinson, youngster, Richard Lloyd Turflinger, Bart, Robert Lee Griffith McGriff, and Ronald Boy Slocum McCool. Guess these are all the people that recruited them, huh? June 1978. Byron Barry Mills is sentenced to serve 20 years in federal prison for his role in the plotting of Fresno Bank robbery, which took place in June 1976. Aryan Brotherhood member, May 20th, 1979, Byron Barry Mills murders AB associate John Marsloff at the USP Atlanta, Georgia prison. In the 1980, Aryan Brotherhood establishes a 3-man federal commission to direct the activity of newly commissioned federal faction. Barry Byron Mills assumes unofficial command. June 8th, 1980, AB associate Robert Hogan is murdered on the orders of Byron Barry Mills. February 1982, California Aryan Brotherhood faction leaders John William Stinson, Richard Lloyd Turflinger, and Robert Lee Griffith, Robert Boyd Slocum, and Edward Tyler Burnett form a 12-man council to govern the group's affairs in the state prison system. The council then formed a 3-man commission, Griffin, Slocum, and Burnett, which controlled the 12-man council. The council has been reduced to 6 over the years. So this is interesting how the federal faction of the AB has a different type of chain of command or chain of authority, man, but it still is able to operate. So here we go now. We got September 27th, 1982. Aryan Brotherhood leader Thomas Silverstein murders Raymond Cadillac Smith, leader of the D.C. mob at the United States Penitentiary, Marion, Illinois. December 9th, 1982. Aryan Brotherhood member Neil Bomington is murdered at the USP Penitentiary, Lewisburg, by members of the D.C. mob in retaliation for the murder of Raymond Cadillac Smith. Now, these cases were kind of interesting, man. The D.C. mob stuff, eventually there was indictments on them, man, and there was actually other people from black factions that were testifying on behalf of the AB. So January 3rd, 1983, AB member Robert Blinky Griffith is found guilty of killing T-Bone Gibson. February 3rd, 1983, AB member Richard Barnes is murdered on the order of Ronald Boyd Slocum. September 23rd, 1983, AB associate Gregory Kiefer is stabbed to death at the USP Marion, Illinois by another AB associate over a drug debt. Byron Barry Mills is the one who authorized this hit. Barry Mills is involved in a lot of this stuff, if you notice. October 6, 1983, AB member Richard Rhino Andriasen is stabbed to death by an AB associate at USP Penitentiary, Leavenworth. Andriesen's murder was authorized by AB leaders who believed Andriesen had provided the name of an AB associate involved in a robbery in Santa Ana, California, Ronald Boyd Slocum and Byron Barry Mills. So it seems like these guys are always involved in the mix, Ronald Slocum and Byron Barry Mills, as they seem like the most impactful individuals. October 6, 1983, AB leader Thomas Silverstein stabs Officer Eugene Klutz 40 times at the USP Marion for disrespecting him. Officer Bob Hoffman is stabbed 35 to 40 times by Silverstein's crime partner at Marion the same afternoon. January 30th, 1984, Officer Boyd Spikerman is stabbed to death at the Federal Correctional Institute in Oxford, Wisconsin by an AB associate. Man, they with that action. February 7th, 1984, Robert Walter Scully assaults a fellow inmate at San Quentin. March 13th, 1984, John William Stinson sends a kite informing Pete Poulos of the defection of Aryan Brotherhood member Rick Rose. April 12th, 1984, 24-year-old AB Jesse Brunn sets fire to a black inmate in the shower area at Folsom Prison. The victim suffers burns over 25% of his body. April 27th, 1984, R. Sculley attempts to stab a guard at San Quentin. See, these crimes the AB be committing are off the hook, man, and they get even more treacherous later on. May 1st, 1984, Robert Walter Scully assaults a San Quentin guard with a shank. A search of his person turned up 3 hacksaw blades in his rectum. 2 .22 caliber bullets were also detected in his stomach. All charges were later dismissed. Man. May 29th, 1985, Robert Walter Scully is charged with assaulting a fellow inmate in possession of a weapon at San Quentin. Sculley is later sentenced to 6 additional years in prison for stabbing an unnamed inmate. September 1985, Tyler Davis Bignum is named to the 3-man federal commission. October 10th, 1987, Rodney Dale Ross stabs 33-year-old Gordon Gaskill to death at Folsom State Prison. Ooh-wee. June 22nd, 1987, AB member Art Rufo was shot in the hip by Officer David Pitts during a knife attack on a black inmate. Rufo attack occurs at the same time fellow AB Paul John Cornfed Schneider attacks a second black inmate in what prison authorities define as a hit attempt. The incident kicks off Hell Week, a series of attacks at Folsom Prison ordered by Wendell Blue Norris, a founding member of the Aryan Brotherhood. That's kind of interesting. It's the first time I ever heard of Hell Week. July 7th, 1987, in an attack ordered by Wendell Norris in retaliation for the shooting of Art Rufo, Paul John Schneider stabs rookie correctional officer Carl Kropp in the throat during a strip search. B. Officer Pitts is wounded by a shotgun blast as he drives to his West Sacramento home. So they were trying to hit him on the streets and in the prison, man. So that's the difference with the Aryan Brotherhood, man. They know no boundaries. October 10th, 1987. Robert Walter Scully is charged with possessing a weapon at Tehachapi Prison. Charges are later dropped. November 25th, 1987, Judith Daniel Bach's girlfriend of Philip Wildman Fortman is charged with providing AB members with the addresses of prison guards. I think she worked for the DA or something like that. March 15th, 1988, AB defector Robert Ryan Rowland outlined a plot to kill correctional officers as soon as the personnel was available. July 14th, 1988, Aryan Brotherhood member Rodney Dale Ross is convicted of killing inmate Gordon Gaskill at Folsom State Prison. Yeah, the guys, man, that's a brief outline history of the Aryan Brotherhood, man. As you can tell, man, the Aryan Brotherhood, man, is a little bit more treacherous when it comes to certain things, man. They're quick, just like the BGF was at one time, to really hit correctional officers, man, which is kind of interesting because the Aryan Brotherhood had a lot of assistance in their plight, you know what I mean, in their movement, through a lot of, you know, guards who had racial overtones or racial ambitions and so forth, man. There was a lot of times BGF or NF would be set up by the guards at the direction of the Aryan Brotherhoods. Those are facts. And I think that's one of the reasons why the MA made a smart move in aligning forces with them or having an alliance with them on behalf of having the Aryan Brotherhood, who had certain type of plugins to certain different facilities and so forth, man. So it was always beneficial to the MA. And I think the AB was smart with that too, because the MA being a very strong faction, it kind of helped cover them against their numbers. Because, you know, the white population has always been a little bit less, more of a minority in the prison system. So, you know, a couple things if you notice from this historical outline, you know, the Baron, you know, he's almost involved in every key aspect as far as the historical components and stuff, you know. They don't mention really, I don't think they mention nothing about the Bluebirds, but the Bluebirds, I think, were the original faction that was established as a protection racket against all the other prison gangs. And I think the name changed over in 1967 to the Aryan Brotherhood. You know, if you notice, though, there was a lot of hits on those correctional officers, man, a lot of movidas. And the AB kind of sophisticated, has a sophisticated type of chain of command structure. Like, they already had a 6-man council at one time in the state, you know, with 12 council members, the federal commission. And so they've been able to flourish, man. And, you know, I'm kind of interested to see how, like, do they have a banking system? You know what I mean? As far as for the organization, where does their money go? Where does it be generated? I have never seen anything online that discusses, you know, the financial components of an organization. And see, every organization has to be financially supported. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's individual members making that money for themselves or for the whole collective. And so, you know, they're able to really influence and, you know, utilize a lot of the white inmates. The only thing that I thought that was kind of interesting is there was a lot of AB members that got hit by associates in here. And, most of the time, all these group organizations, whether it be MA or NF, you're only supposed to get moved on by an actual member of that particular organization. It's kind of like a slight, kind of like a disrespect if you allow one of your associates to do it unless you have no access to them. That first riot, though, they talked about 2,800 people. I don't believe it. Probably was a lot of people, what I'm saying? But I'm thinking maybe 400, 600 each. 400 whites, 400 blacks. Those numbers would sound more realistic to me. 2,800 people. I don't think they even had that much, to house that many inmates at that time. I kept this AB timeline short because there's a lot of things maybe I'll go on into the future, such as the MA AB conflict that occurred in San Quentin back in 2004 or 2003, around that time era. I remember getting the NF filter that was filtered out, talking about that the AB and MA were at war, and it started in the adjustment center. There was some stabbings on both sides, some spearings, and that started to transpire and have effects at other prisons, level 4 yards. And we were told word for word that we will stay out of this war. You know what I mean? See, the issue that the NF and Norteños have always had with the whites is it wasn't that they were trying to reject any of these white factions. It's just that they could never be supportive of any of these white factions that fell under the AB's command or authority. It's the same thing with Sureños. I'm saying? The NF never had any issue, or we were never given directives to really hate the Sureños in that aspect. But if they embraced under the MA's control, they were considered in opposition, and because therefore they're doing their bidding. This is how prison politics kind of work, and very few were able to break from the chains of these organizations that controlled it, man. Thomas Silverstein, Silverstein, I always say his name wrong, but he was fucking a straight killer, man. What I'm saying? That dude was with the action. Michael Thompson, man, even though he debriefed and told when he first hit the system, as a youngster back then, he was a Christian, believe it or not. But he was always, I heard, with that action, though. He didn't become an AB till later on. He became an Aryan Brotherhood after the baseball bat incident out there on the main line in Tracy. When they slammed all the NF down, they also took a lot of these associated ABs they felt down. He later became an AB member back then. But he was definitely with that action, man. I talked to one of the, the old timers that actually personally knew him. He said he was actually a good dude. He said, his story may be embellished, about the fucking 7 NF members coming at him. But other than that, he said he was with that action. What I'm saying? And a good dude, he said. As you already know, he later testified in some big trials against the AB and the Hells Angels and so forth, man. But, there's also other issues that happened. The mauling case that happened out there in San Francisco with the attorneys. AB's always been able to have certain people that had powerful positions or couples and stuff assist them in their plight. And a lot of times what they would do is they would bring the fucking racial aspect to it, the racial purity and so forth, and kind of manipulate people. And next thing you know, they got people that worked at like the police stations or, DA's office or attorneys and so forth that are able to do their bidding. I've met a few ABs. I can discuss that. I've met, like Buzzard, the one they talk about, the one that got shot in the groin. I met him back in the 2000s. OG Pirate, OG Tank. A lot of these cats, I did time with, man. The AB, they're very treacherous, man. Either they're going to be fucking straight cold stone killers towards you and not even acknowledge you, or they're going to be respectful. It wasn't uncommon to encounter an AB member that wouldn't even fucking talk to you. That's how much hatred they had towards the NF. And it kind of was vice versa. And I think a lot of that stems from them involving themselves in a war that didn't concern them. According to a lot of old-time NF members, a lot of the hits that happen against NF members that are claimed to be either MAAB related or whatnot, he said a lot of them were actually done just by AB members, like Lugo. The person that they mentioned who killed Lugo in Soledad isn't even the person that mentioned him. It was a AB member named Woodsy. And there was a couple other hits like that. So the NF has killed a lot of ABs as well, though. You know what I'm saying? That can't be mistaken. But this is a whole different time era, man, when just being treacherous and being about that action is just how life was, man. The AB is not an organization to take lightly. You know what I'm saying? A lot of things that they've adapted, like the term the brand, that comes from the Lewis and Moore book. You ever read it? The Second Brand. They got a lot of their ideas because that was a very popular book everybody was reading in prison. Even the NF got some ideas on the sombrero tattoo from the Louis L'Amour books. You know, as you know, there was a few issues between BGF and DC Blacks at that time in this timeline, but there's a lot more incidents that people don't even report, man. And there's some things that people don't realize. Like I said, man, the AB was able to get a lot of assistance, right, through the administration at that time. They played into that, and it really was beneficial towards them. You know what I'm saying? As far as in putting forth a, establishing certain facilities, especially when they got away from other prisons. You know, I think the AB had a little bit of turmoil in the 80s, a little bit too much attention. They started to lose a little bit of control over the white population because a lot of them were locked down. And I say in the 2000s, you started to see a little bit of change. They started to recruit individuals from certain factions, you know what I mean? And to do their bidding, which was a smart move. So they would find individuals from these small little white groups that would pop up, and then they would recruit someone in there, and then therefore they would be basically a secret undercover AB member, but that secret AB member would have control over that faction. So therefore they were already infiltrated into all these groups, and that's when you seen the whole program change. And they were smart because they started to utilize a lot of the skinheads as well. See, in the 90s, 80s, the Woods weren't really strong on these main lines, keeping it 100. They'd have like long hair or mullets and shit, and hey, brother, I mean, go take care of my wife when you get out, brother. All that kind of shit, you mean? Sex play and stuff like that. They didn't have no really sense of security, and, you know, there was very few that really played that political prison politic line. You mean, you could tell the difference when one came. You know, they didn't have really discipline, any type of structure, and that's no disrespect to the Wood faction, man. I say around 2000, 2002, they kind of changed their whole direction. You started to see them have a lot more discipline. You started to see them have their own regulars, doing their routine, all that, man. You started having, people went from having mullets to shaving their heads and talking about fucking, 8-8, H8 and all that, man. So that's what I seen. And next thing you know, they went from having a very non-disciplined program to having a more strictly disciplined program. I don't know if that was because they were having conflicts with the Sudanos a little bit at set facilities or whatnot, but I seen them become basically one of the most second organized groups. You know what I'm saying? Right up there with the Sudanos like this. It depended who was there within the white groups, but they also had some internal conflicts, with leadership on these yards, like P9, warrior skinheads and NLR members. This member may be under this particular AB member, so when they get there, if there's no communication, they would run into a lot of conflict. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these groups intentionally did not like each other, but they had to tolerate each other, which made it even more interesting. I did a lot of time with AB members, and I've never really had any personal issues. It's like with the NLR, either half of them were cool with me, like really cool, or half of them we just didn't like each other. And we would barely even acknowledge each other, because I used to get that from some of the NLR cats, especially the NLR cats that were from down south. They had an extreme hatred for the North. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because they had stronger relationships with the Sudanos down south, but a lot of the NLRs that I met from up north were cool. They fucked with homeboys on the streets, believe it or not. Anyways, this is a quick spiel for you guys, man. Hope you enjoy the timeline. I'm going to try to drop some, an AB pictures. I got about tons of pictures of the Aryan Brotherhood, and I'm going to do like a little slideshow and stuff. Maybe give you like a quick, breakdown. I'm not an AB professional, but I know more about the AB's, basic, interactions. There was rumors that the individual Harpo, had a homosexual lover as well. One of their leaderships at one time. But you can't take nothing from these guys. You know what I'm saying? They were definitely there, and they've been able to last all these years, and they've just been noticed as one of the most brutal killing machines that there is. The Aryan Brotherhood is, and I think a lot of that has to do with they're not afraid to hit fucking cops, whereas other groups maybe will not do that. Like the MA and NF, they don't really do that things. They don't really hit cops because it would bring too much attention. They may cause a little riot to get their rights back and stuff, but it's very rare that you'll see the NF engage in it. The AB got involved in the San Quentin 6 issue. You know what I'm saying? And they've had times, they've had issues, you know, where they've gotten off the cops. But even recently, man, they had an individual who killed a cop down south, and they, you know, they deemed him no good. Whereas 20 years before, he would have been fucking applauded for doing that. So the game's done changed, guys. Anyways, man, I hope you enjoyed this spill. This is a little bit follow-up, elaborate breakdown, and I stopped it around 87, 88 because I thought everything else, it's more important for us to focus on the origins and the history and the, you know, the development, you know. Anyways, what, Flacco, I'm gone. All right, guys, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button. This is your boy, Real Talk with Flacco, coming live and direct, man. Hope you guys have a positive, productive day. I'm going to prepare this little slideshow in a minute on some Aryan Brotherhood members and their pictures. Rato.